Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. The subject of today's video is going to be a redraft of the 2011 NBA draft. I'm going to be going over the top 15 picks. If we know now what we would have known then, how would this draft have shaken out? Also want to point out that I will be considering like the team's draft position at this point. So what I mean by that is like, for instance, at this point, Toronto had DeMar DeRozan, so I don't think that they would have taken a wing. Or like, um, let me think here. Washington had John Wall, so I don't think that they would take a point guard at this position. Even if like the best guy on the board is Kemba, I'm not going to put him on Washington just because I don't think that that's realistic and that they would have taken him at that spot. So I'm picking based on what we know now, but also like what the team's position was at the time and how they would have been thinking. Because I don't think it would have made sense for like a team like Washington to take Kemba Walker, even if he was like the best guy at the board. So number one overall, I think the Cavaliers still go with Kyrie Irving. I think it makes a lot of sense for them. He was what they needed. They needed a point guard. I think they had Baron Davis, but he walked in free agency, so they really needed every position on the team, and I think it makes sense that they go with a point guard here. It's kind of a table setter and a good guy to start running the team. Um, yeah, and I think that's honestly really most of what I have to say regarding that. I think it makes a lot of sense for them. Um, Number two overall, right at this point, the Timberwolves had as their cornerstones like Michael Beasley and Kevin Love. So I think they were looking for like a shooting guard type of guy or a shooting guard. They had point guard because they had Rubio at this point because he was agreeing to come over the season. So I think it was like shooting guard or center. So for them, I'm going to go with Klay Thompson because I think knowing what we know now, I give a slight edge to him over Jimmy Butler because I think um, Klay's just a little bit less fuss than Jimmy Butler, so I'm going to say they would go with Klay. But those two are pretty close. Utah, at this pick, I think originally they went with Enes Kanter. Um, this team had Al Jefferson, they had Devin Harris, they had uh, Derek Favors. So really and they had Gordon Hayward. So really what this team again needed was a shooting guard or a small forward. I think they'd go with Kawhi because I think they'd be comfortable sliding Gordon Hayward to the shooting guard, and I think Kawhi is better than Jimmy Butler. So I think that makes sense for them to go with Kawhi here. Um, very obviously a very talented player on offense and defense. You can see a little bit of his credentials on screen on the left there. And it's interesting to think what Utah would have become with those wings of Hayward and Kawhi playing together for an extended period of time. So let's see here. Who has the next pick? I believe Cleveland again. And let's see here. At this point in time, they had Kyrie. They had Antoine Jameson for one more season. They had Anderson Varejao. But they still were basically looking for any and every position, and I think it's here that they go with a guy who I've been talking about a little bit, but Jimmy Butler. And think of what you would have had if you would have been able to pair Kyrie and Jimmy Butler for an extended period of time. It really would have changed the shape of this team, and it really would have changed when LeBron came back how this team had gone, rather than like Tristan Thompson, who was a decent starter, but definitely not like anywhere near all-star level. So I think that a Jimmy Butler type would be really good for this team and really transform the direction of the franchise overall. Number five, Toronto. They originally went with Valanciunas. At the time, they had DeRozan. Were just about to sign Kyle Lowry. They needed a big man, but they also really could have used a small forward or a power forward. Anything but shooting guard and point guard, really, at this point. And I think for them, I know it's going to sound interesting, but looking over this board, I think um, I think Tobias Harris is a good pick for them here. And I know it maybe seems like a stretch and like Kemba's better, but again, they were just about to sign Kyle Lowry, so I don't think that like drafting Kemba makes a ton of sense for them. Um, and I think Tobias Harris, he takes a couple of years to develop, but once he does, he really becomes an impact guy for the team and really provides a good scoring punch for them. At 6, Washington, they had John Wall, and they didn't really have anything else. So I think anything outside of point guard is what they would have considered at this point. And looking over this list, I am going back and forth. Um, and there's actually a good amount of like solid starters on this list right here. But I'm going to say that they would have gone with Bojan Bogdanovic. He's turned into a really nice like 6-man or starter kind of guy. Like can give you 16 points and good shooter. So I think he would have been a nice pairing with John Wall. Other guys I was considering at the spot would have been like the Morris twins um, or let's see here, who else? Maybe Nikola Mirotic. It's all debatable, I think. Um, Actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna replace this one now that I'm seeing Nikola Vucevic. I think would have been a much better pick for them at that because they needed a center because they had, I believe, um, they had JaVale, but they were just about to trade him, I think. So they could use a nice all-star caliber center in Vucevic. Sacramento had Cousins. They had Tyreek Evans, but basically anything like power forward or any wing position they were looking for. So I think here we finally see Kemba get off the board. Um, would have been a great pairing with DeMarcus Cousins offensively instead of Jimmer Fredette. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them. 8, Detroit. They had Greg Monroe and they had like Rodney Stuckey and Ben Gordon. So I think they're kind of looking for like a wing at this position or a power forward, like a small forward or power forward. I think here it makes sense for Bogdanovich to go. He would have taken a couple years to get over, but he would have been a good addition to the team and would have provided a nice wing scoring punch. Charlotte at number 9. This is one where I honestly am not really remembering what the team situation was. I think they had just come off of like the whole Gerald Wallace, Steven Jackson kind of era, and they were in a definitely a rebuilding phase. And this team wasn't really led by anybody, and I feel like they're kind of open to drafting anybody here. Um, it's honestly shocking that they got Kemba out of this, that he fell so low, considering he was so highly touted in the tournament as well. But I'm gonna say that they go with, um, I'll say that they go with, I'll say Nikola Mirotic. He turned into a pretty good NBA player, like probably for his career, like I think 12 points per game. I think he didn't come into the league until 2014, but he's a great floor spacer, and I think he actually went back over to Europe now, but he was a very good offensive player in the league for about 4 or 5 years. Okay, let's see here. Milwaukee, they're still in this Brandon Jennings, Andrew Bogut era at this point, so I think they're looking for like a forward. I'll say they'll go with Marcus Morris. He's proven to be a pretty good forward in the league, and um, he can give you some defense, he can give you some shooting, he can do some like ISO offense if he has to, but it's not a strong suit. Um, yeah, I think he's a really respectable player and like a solid starter in the league. And next, Golden State, they had Steph at the time, they had Monte Ellis, so I think they had just drafted Epe Udo. So they're really looking again for a forward, and I think again it makes sense for them to go with the other Morris twin because they're really very similar as far as their game. Markieff can give you the same sort of thing. He can give you some shooting, some good defense, a little bit of his own shot creation or playmaking, but not much. And so I think Markieff makes a lot of sense here. Next, Utah had a core of Gordon Hayward, Derek Favors, and as we said, they also had Al Jefferson. And earlier, I have them drafting um, Kawhi. So I think really the position they're looking for that's probably weakest at this point, you'd say, is like point guard. And with the positions left on the board, oh man, who do I think that they'd go with? I guess I'll say Reggie Jackson. Kind of a head scratching dude, but I think he's a lot better than A lot better than actually no. I'll say Brandon Knight. I know Reggie Jackson. Brandon Knight, I think his peak was better than Reggie Jackson's peak, even though Reggie Jackson's peak has lasted longer. So I'll go with Brandon Knight. Next, Phoenix, they had Nash at the tail end. They had just lost Amari. They had no more Shaq. So I feel like they really needed a center. Honestly, there's still a good amount of decent options on the board. You know, you got Valanciunas, Thompson, Ennis Cantor, um, Kenneth Fareed, still a pretty good option there. Um, So I think what I'm gonna go with Davis Bertans. He's a good pick there too. But honestly, he's taken so long to catch on. I don't think that they would go for him even. So I will say that they'll go with Jonas Valanciunas here. A very solid career. You know, he's peaking out a lot more in Memphis right now, but with Toronto, he's a very solid player, like about 12 points, 8 rebounds for the last decade. So I think he's a nice complement to this team, and he can kind of take the place of Marcin Gortat, who I think left Phoenix pretty quickly. I think it was after this 11 to 12 season that Marcin Gortat left, or 12 to 13, and he went to Washington. Houston, they had a really funky team at this point. They had like Goran Dragic, Kevin Martin. I think honestly that was about it. Like as far as like real notable guys, they had other guys like I think Francisco Garcia. They had Luis Scola, I believe still. They had Chuck Hayes, I believe still. But it was like all these dudes that are really good like seventh men, but not really starters that they had starting. So I think that they were kind of looking for anything like just best available dude at this point, and I think honestly Chandler Parsons. I This isn't where they originally took him. I think they actually took him in the second round, but to me Chandler Parsons is the best pick here. You know, really good career from 2011 to 2000. I'd say about 16 or 15, but then after that fell off. But a really good 5 to 6 year stretch for a dude. Um, then Indiana at the last pick originally took Kawhi. At this point, they had Danny Granger. They had Roy Hibbert. They had Darren Collison. So looking for like a shooting guard or a power forward. And, you know, at the time, they were still kind of counting Tristan Thompson as a power forward, so I'll say that they go with him. I think he's a bit better than Fareed in that he has a bit more bounce to his game and a bit of a better or taller, bigger dude, so I think he gets picked over Kenneth Fareed. But still, as I say, there's some decent dudes left on this draft board, like Ennis Cantor still left. You still have like decent role players like Fareed, Biombo, Alec Burks, Reggie Jackson, Iman Shumpert, um, and then you also got on this side uh, Eachwan Moore and Davis Bertans. And yeah, so a draft where pretty good draft honestly, and kind of a forgotten one too. Kyrie, Clay, Kawhi, Jimmy, Vucevic, Kemba, all dudes that made All-Star teams. And then besides that, these other top 15 guys like Tobias Harris, Bogdanovich, Mirotic, the Morris twins, Valanciunas, Parsons. You know, Brandon Knight and Parsons had shorter primes than the rest of these guys. Same with Mirotic, but they all were like very good players and contributing on um, and making big contributions to teams. So let me guys know what you think or like what your order would be if you did a redraft. This is mine. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.